Gilgamesh, subtitled Recovering the Masterpiece of Babylonian Literature, because that's what it is. But first of all, we do have to ask ourselves the question, what is Gilgamesh?
In the Babylonian language, which is a Semitic tongue related to the modern languages of Hebrew and Arabic and Aramaic.
A 70-year-old scholar sits in his study, surrounded by ancient clay tablets. He spent his entire life translating one story. Now, he's speaking like time is running out. Before I die, please listen. Andrew George isn't being dramatic. He's decoded a 4,000-year-old message that was buried on purpose. A message about death that someone desperately wanted you to hear. The catch? This message was written by a king who had everything: power, wealth, even partial immortality, and still faced the same terror you do. What did he discover?
Astronomical references, a moon, a star, various symbols, which even could be symbolized as a wristwatch. Technology being used 6,000 years ago.
That changed everything. And why was it hidden for 4,000 years? December 3rd, 1872, London. George Smith stands before the Society of Biblical Archaeology. His hands shake as he holds fragments of clay covered in wedge-shaped marks. What he's about to announce will shock the religious world. These tablets contain a flood story. A man builds a boat. Animals enter 2 by 2. The world drowns. One family survives. Sound familiar? Here's the problem. This version is older than the Bible. Much older. The Victorian audience sits in stunned silence. If this story existed first, what does that mean about everything they believe? Smith found these fragments in the ruins of Nineveh, in what's now Iraq. They came from a library belonging to King Ashurbanipal, buried for 2,600 years under collapsed palace walls. But the flood story? That's just one tablet. There are 11 more. Together, they tell the story of a king named Gilgamesh, a king who watched his best friend die and couldn't accept it, a king who abandoned everything to find the secret of living forever. Smith died 3 years later on his third expedition to find the missing pieces. He was only 36. He never finished the story, but someone else would. Andrew George picked up where Smith left off. 130 years later, for decades he pieced together fragments scattered across museums worldwide, tablets broken into dozens of pieces, different versions in different languages, some sections missing entirely. In 2003, he published what scholars call the definitive translation, the most complete version of the Epic of Gilgamesh that exists in English. He's now in his 70s, and he's speaking with unusual urgency. Before I die, please listen, he says, not as drama, as fact. Because George has spent more time with these ancient words than almost any living person. He's read them in the original Akkadian. He's traced how they changed across 2,000 years. He's seen what scribes added, what they removed, what they desperately wanted to preserve. And he's convinced the message isn't just history, it's a warning. The epic tells you something about death that most people spend their whole lives avoiding, something that Gilgamesh learned too late, something that Andrew George believes you need to hear now, while there's still time to do something about it. But to understand the warning, you first need to know how this story survived at all. The Epic of Gilgamesh didn't start as one story. Around 2100 BCE, 5 separate poems circulated in ancient Sumer, different stories about the same king, performed separately in royal courts, written in Sumerian, a language already dying. Then something changed. Around 1800 BCE, someone tried to combine them. They translated the poems into Akkadian and wove them into one narrative. They called it Surpassing All Other Kings. Why? What made Gilgamesh's story so important that it needed to survive? Political upheaval swept through Mesopotamia. Cities fell. Libraries burned. The scribal spools that preserved these stories closed forever. But the epic moved north as empires rose and fell. Babylonian, Assyrian, Persian. Scribes kept copying it. They didn't just preserve it, they kept changing it. adding sections, removing contradictions, updating the language.
Between 1300 and 1000 BCE, a scholar named Sinliki Uneni created what became the standard version, 12 tablets, a complete arc, beginning with "He who saw the deep," a phrase that means seeing into the nature of reality itself. This version spread across the ancient world. Copies appeared in different cities, different dialects. The story adapted, but the core remained. Then, silence. The last known copy was buried in Ashurbanipal's library around 600 BCE when Nineveh fell to invading armies. The epic vanished for 2,500 years. When George Smith found those tablets in 1872, he unknowingly uncovered something that multiple civilizations had fought to preserve. A story about a king who had to learn the hardest lesson of all. And that lesson starts with friendship. Gilgamesh ruled Uruk, the greatest city in ancient Mesopotamia. 2/3 divine, 1/3 human. That's how the epic describes him. Not fully God, not fully mortal, caught between worlds. He used his power without mercy. He took what he wanted. The people suffered under his rule but couldn't stop him. Who challenges someone who's partly divine? The gods heard the people's cries. They created Enkidu, a wild man raised by animals, equal in strength to Gilgamesh, his opposite in every other way. When they first met, they fought like enemies. The ground shook, buildings cracked. Then something unexpected happened. They became friends. Not just allies, not just companions. The kind of friendship that changes who you are at your core. Enkidu civilized Gilgamesh, taught him empathy, showed him that power without wisdom is just cruelty. Together, they went on adventures. They traveled to the cedar forest to fight Humbaba, a monster appointed by the gods. They won, but their victory came with a cost. The gods decided someone had to pay for Humbaba's death. They chose Enkidu. He fell sick. For 12 days, Gilgamesh watched his friend suffer, watched him grow weaker, watched him face the terror of dying. On the 12th day, Enkidu died, and Gilgamesh, powerful, partly divine Gilgamesh, fell apart. He didn't just mourn, he refused to accept it, because if death could take Enkidu, it could take him too. His divinity wouldn't save him. His power meant nothing. For the first time in his life, Gilgamesh felt true fear. Gilgamesh sat beside Enkidu's body for 7 days. He wouldn't let anyone take it away, wouldn't accept that his friend was gone. The epic describes him touching Enkidu's chest, listening for a heartbeat that would never come, watching for breath that had stopped forever. On the 7th day, a worm crawled out of Enkidu's nose. That's when Gilgamesh understood. Death doesn't care about friendship. It doesn't care about power. It takes everyone. His grief turned into something else, panic. The epic says he ran into the wilderness wearing animal skins, the mighty king of Uruk, wandering like a madman, asking everyone he met the same question. How do I avoid what happened to my friend? Most people told him the same thing. You can't. Death is humanity's share. The gods decided this when they created us. But Gilgamesh heard a rumor. One human had escaped death, a man named Utnapishtim, who survived the Great Flood. The gods had granted him immortality as a reward. If one human could escape death, maybe another could too. Gilgamesh abandoned his throne, left his city, set out on an impossible journey to find the only immortal human who ever lived. What he didn't know was the journey itself was the point. Gilgamesh traveled to the edge of the world. He crossed mountains that touched the sky, walked through tunnels of absolute darkness for 12 leagues. No light, no sound, just stone pressing in from all sides. He met a tavern keeper named Siduri at the edge of the ocean. She looked at this wild-eyed king and asked him a simple question. Why are you running from death? You can't escape it. Why not enjoy the life you have? Gilgamesh ignored her. He crossed the waters of death, an ocean that kills anyone who touches it. He found Utnapishtim on a distant shore. Finally, the answer he'd been searching for. Utnapishtim looked at Gilgamesh with something like pity. You want immortality? He asked. First, prove you can conquer sleep. Stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. That's all. Don't sleep. If you can master sleep, maybe you can master death. Gilgamesh agreed. He sat down, determined to stay awake, and immediately fell asleep. For 7 days, he slept while Utnapishtim's wife baked a loaf of bread each day as proof. When Gilgamesh woke up, 7 moldy loaves sat beside him. He'd failed before he started. Utnapishtim delivered the truth. You can't even conquer sleep. How will you conquer death? Go home, Gilgamesh. Accept what you are. But as Gilgamesh prepared to leave, Utnapishtim's wife convinced his husband to offer one more chance.
A plant at the bottom of the ocean. Whoever eats it becomes young again. Not immortality, but close enough. Gilgamesh dove to the ocean floor. He tied stones to his feet to sink deeper. His lungs burned. The pressure crushed his chest. He found the plant, grabbed it despite its thorns, rose to the surface gasping. He held immortality in his hands, but he didn't eat it right away. He decided to bring it back to Uruk first, share it with the elders, test it on someone old to make sure it worked. On the journey home, he stopped at a pool to bathe. A snake smelled the plant's sweetness, slithered out of the water, swallowed it whole. The snake shed its skin and slithered away, renewed. Gilgamesh had nothing. The epic says he sat down and wept, not tears of frustration, tears of understanding. He traveled to the edge of the world, crossed the waters of death, dove to the ocean floor, held immortality in his hands, and still lost it. Because that's what happens. You can't fight death. You can't trick it. You can't bargain with it. The gods gave humanity death and kept life for themselves. That's your share. That's everyone's share. Even a king who's 2/3 divine can't change it. So what now? Gilgamesh returned to Uruk. The epic describes him seeing his city's walls for the first time with new eyes. These walls would outlast him. The bricks would remain after his body turned to dust. The city would remember his name long after he stopped breathing. That's the legacy. Not living forever, building something that matters. This is what Andrew George calls the hard truth at the epic's center. You're going to die. Everyone you love is going to die. No amount of power, wealth, or wisdom changes that. But here's what you can change: what you do with the time you have. Remember Sidurti, the tavern keeper Gilgamesh met before crossing the ocean. She told him something he wasn't ready to hear then. Fill your belly with good food. Dance and play day and night. Wear fresh clothes. Bathe in clean water. Cherish the child who holds your hand. Enjoy your wife's embrace. This is humanity's share. Not immortality, not escape from death. Just this, the chance to live fully before you die. George emphasizes this message with unusual intensity. He's in his 70s now. He's spent decades with these ancient words, and he sees people making the same mistake Gilgamesh made. Running from death instead of living with it, chasing immortality through legacy, through achievement, through desperate attempts to be remembered, instead of being present for the life they actually have. The epic survived 4,000 years to tell you this. But most people still don't listen. Andrew George says the epic's final message is simpler than people think. Death makes you wise. Loss teaches you what matters. Suffering shows you who you are. Gilgamesh became a good king only after he failed. Only after he lost everything. Only after he accepted the one truth he spent the entire epic running from. Your time is limited. That's not a curse. It's what makes the
time matter? Andrew George has translated the oldest story ever written, a story that survived empires, floods, fires, and 2,500 years of silence. And now he's asking you the same question the epic asks. What will you do with the time you have left?